You're now tuned into the sounds of
Big Nate Sports Talk.
It's on all the time, anytime.
Tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that is on all the time, anytime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the next big thing, the latest up-and-coming sports journalist, your host, Nathan Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony Handy, for that wonderful introduction. As always, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, Nathan Snell of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. This is episode 3, season 18 of the podcast. And in this episode, Nathan's official 2024 mock draft 1.0 is officially going live as of today. But before we get into that, there's a few things I want to say up front. Episode 2 should already be uploaded. Episode 4, I'll have a special guest join me in a little bit. So stay tuned in for that. Episodes 5 and 6, I've decided I'm still kind of pondering, should I record the episodes tonight or just wait and recap the games, because at this point it's week 18 and I don't know, I feel like it's best just recap the games. MLB mock draft, that will be recorded sometime this upcoming week. 1.0 will go up probably Tuesday at the latest. Maryland football, got to talk about that. Women's basketball, we'll talk about that. We're getting ready for Purdue and Michigan State. So just be tuned in for those episodes. And also keep in mind as well that might sometime before January's over, because the WNBA free agency is almost approaching soon. Mock draft 2.0 will go up at some point. But let's just get into the video. And as always, thank you for your support on this channel. It's much appreciated. Continue to please comment, and subscribe and share the content. Greatly appreciate it. NFL mock draft 1.0. For me, this was interesting. This was tough. When I look back on what I did with this mock draft, there's a few things I take into consideration. So let me start. I'll say it this way. I'm not like many where after 2, maybe 3 years, it's time we, shuffle the board and look for somebody else. We can all agree to disagree, because there's some situations where, especially in these first 10 picks, where you'll see where I kind of go away from what others are saying, because I stand by this, and I feel to an extent it's somewhat being proven that if you're going to draft a quarterback, okay, you've got to ensure the quarterback has some help. I look at example. Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick. Frank Reich was not the head coach for him. But this kid has nothing to work with. And I'm concerned going into free agency, knowing David Temp and looking at their owner, who it starts with him. where do you want to take the direction of this team? You know, Chicago, for example, we're saying move on from Justin Fields. Okay, that's fine. Personally, I don't think Matt Eberflus is the head coach for Justin Fields. That's just my opinion. We can agree to disagree. But let's say, okay, and I want to talk about this especially when I talk about Washington. If example, Chicago, Washington, Minnesota, even Denver, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., Jalen Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Drake May, they're drafted in these situations and they don't flourish, whether it's because of X, Y, and Z. What's the excuse then? See, like, I don't want these guys to be put in situations and, oh, okay, I have nothing to work with. So, like, for example, let's just get right into it. With the number one overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, I said the Chicago Bears should take Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Chicago needs another playmaker on the other side of DJ Moore. I can't see Chicago moving on from Justin Fields. For me, you first and foremost, they invested a lot in him to move up in the way they did. I don't think outside of them they need an offensive line. The guy that I wanted in the draft last year, they didn't draft him. He was at Northwestern, if I remember correctly. They need defense, defensive tackle, edge rush, particularly in wide receiver. Because Darnell Mooney, I thought would have turned it around this year. Didn't do that. Disappointed. But for me, I think Marvin is the playmaker that Justin Fields needs. I don't really have any issues with Marvin Harrison. I will only say he's not going to go no higher than maybe 3, but I'll be surprised. And it's all going to depend on what they're going to do. But I really think that they should consider drafting him. But I don't, for now, until we really know what the intentions of the Chicago Bears are, I'm sticking with this pick. Number 2, the Washington Commanders. They should take the kid from Penn State, Lomoya Fasanu. For me, I value offensive line. And outside of Arizona, Washington's offensive line, I'm sorry to say, it's disappointing. And there are some guys they need to go. And guys can't stay healthy, and guys haven't developed. And again, I'm all for making sure that my quarterback, okay, has a stable offensive line. Sure, Washington has $90 million in cap space to do whatever they want to free agency. But what are they going to do with that? For all I know, they're only probably going to make some small moves here. But until then, I really don't think, this is just my opinion, Caleb Williams, Drake May, I don't think they're going to fix the problems in Washington, because if we see these same issues, let's say 2-3 years from now, what is the excuse? Don't come back and say, oh, quarterback, because we all know that it's going to be a clean house in Washington. We all know Ron Rivera is gone, but for me, I'm more comfortable with this pick only because for me, as someone who values offensive line, as I stated, I think a guy who's 6'6", 320 pounds, he's good in both pass protection and run block. And I think there's improvement in that. But I can't see Washington kind of not ignoring that unless they trade down in the draft, which I could possibly see. So, number 3, the New England Patriots I think, start anew. And I think Bill Belichick could potentially be gone. I expect the Patriots to also clean house, in the same situation. Unfortunately, Mac Jones, I don't think that was a good system for him. So I think the Patriots should draft Caleb Williams. Now I know what you're saying, but Daniel Archie, blah, 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 blah. Listen to what I'm saying. I was kind of torn here because they need offensive line, defense, tight end, receiver, linebacker. Because I expect them to move on from quite a bit. For me, I just think it would make a little bit more sense if you moved on, if you just started all anew. I can't see Mac Jones there next year unless something dramatic happens. But I expect it to be different. I would like to see a playmaker there. But where they're at, they're kind of like in a no man's land almost, because I give or take. I mean, if Drake May's there, Caleb Williams is there, why not? I consider Joe Oid here, this next offensive lineman. But for me, I think one of those three picks would be a quarterback or at least offensive line. It wouldn't surprise me if the first 5 picks were not quarterbacks. It wouldn't faze me. Number 4, Joe Oid. I really think, and Arizona's another team, offensive line. They need a lot, and Kyler Murray needs some protection. And I think that this is the guy for me. I think that would fix that. For me, DJ Humphries will be a free. Moving on from him, probably something that will happen. They need to upgrade his protection because it just wasn't. The Arizona's offense line, especially protecting him, wasn't the best. And again, I also considered corner, defensive tackle, edge. They actually do have a later pick in the draft. Defensive tackle, linebacker, offensive lineman again, and wide receiver. I kind of thought Hollywood Brown would have kind of been a playmaker for Kyler, but he's going to be a free agent. So I'm curious to see what they'll do with that in the offseason. Number 5. This is where things kind of got interesting for me. The Los Angeles Chargers are in a position where they are. I expect there to be some changes. Front office has some work to do. There are where Mike Williams coming off an injury next year. You don't know what's going to happen with Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler's going to be a free agent. That defense was disappointing to an extent. It slightly improved in my opinion. Quentin Johnson is a rookie that's developing. I think he'll be fine. I'm not worried about him. I said Los Angeles should draft Brock Bowers out of Georgia. I think this would be I think this could be a good piece for Justin Herbert. The only thing I will say is the reason why I said this because they've gone all in last few years and have made strides to improve at certain positions, and they haven't paid off. And I think why not? I think you do need a guy his size. He's got great hands. I think he'd be a great fit with Justin Herbert. That connection would be something to watch. I mean, he's just been an impactful player, especially at Georgia last 3 seasons. But some mock drafts had him going as low as maybe top 20. I could see him being within the top 10, just my opinion. Number 6, the New York Giants select Malik Nabers. Excuse me. They need another playmaker, wide receiver, because some guys they had just disappointed. I mean, with Daniel Jones not there out for the season, I don't think you got to get guys back healthy. Darren Waller, disappointed in him to an extent. Thought he could be like a viable option playmaker, but the injuries are showing. Last year they drafted Evan Neal. He's kind of struggled, but I expect him to get better. I believe he'll have a turnaround. But for me, Malik coming out of LSU, he's a reliever receiver that has skills, separation ability to be a number 1 wide receiver versus the other receivers in this class. And I'm gonna keep it real. You got to give your quarterback some playmakers. I mean, maybe outside of guys that they had are kind of like, and that was kind of one of the issues why they lost They struggled this year and why they got bounced in the first round last year, because it's just not having, outside of Saquon Barkley, not having another guy out there. And you paid Daniel Jones quite a bit of money, so I don't. If you move on from him, that'll be interesting. I also consider offensive linemen. I think they need a center, defensive tackle, edge, and running back. Because Saquon will be a free agent, Paris Campbell, I think, and Isaiah Simmons. So I'm curious to see what they'll do. But I think they should go with a wide receiver. Tennessee with 7. Rome Ondunes, another wide receiver. I feel as though Will Levis will like. For me, I think he's a good athlete. He's reliable, especially catching. I think he could be a good package for Tennessee, because especially a little disappointed in Treylon Burks' second year, and I thought he would have taken that step forward this year. I still believe he can. DeAndre Hopkins has proven to be a reliable receiver. He's going to, another season where he's had over 1,000 yards. No question there. But they need some playmaking around Will Levis. I also consider offensive line because especially, last year they took Peter Saransky, and I considered one of the guys here, Joe Old. I even considered the young man out of Penn State. I even considered J.C. Lintham out of Alabama, but I feel as though he needs some playmaking. I also looked at it. They need a defensive tackle, corner, edge, and running back, because Derrick Henry most likely will be gone. They're going to move on from Ryan Tannehill, and it'll be interesting to see. But I think they Will Levis is another playmaker for sure. That's how I see it. Number 8. Excuse me. Drake May is drafted by Atlanta Falcons. My second quarterback off the board. For me, I just think this is a good situation. Unfortunately, I feel bad for Desmond Ridder because he just does not fit their system at all. I don't think he's not the quarterback for Arthur Smith, and it's not his fault. It really isn't. It's best that they start anew. I also considered Jalen Daniels here. I even considered Penix Jr. But outside of that, they need a linebacker, receiver, corner, safety, edge. Because Calais Campbell, I believe, was a free agent, but Dupree, Detroit's top first round corner from a couple years ago, Jeff Okudah. So I expect them to make some moves for sure. But at this point, unfortunately, I feel bad for Desmond Ridder, but the experiment has come to an end. So I even consider Michael Penix Jr. here, but I think Drake would make the most sense, in my opinion. So we'll see. Number 9, Chicago drafts Dallas Turner. I feel as though, why not invest in your defense? For me, I think Dallas would be another, but put on the other side of Montez Sweat. Great investment for them for let's see how long that looks in the long term. But I think for Dallas, I think he'd be a great fit. My only concern is just about him getting off the block a little bit better. He definitely, from what I've seen, he has the best size, speed, especially in this year's edge class. So I'm just curious to see how he'll develop, for sure. But for me, again, I think why not take that and again that pick and invest in defense. Number 10, the New York Jets. The Jets, they need offensive line. That was probably the biggest thing that I saw, in my opinion. Outside of quarterback, offensive line, safety, edge, receiver, because what was put out there on the field this year just did not exceed expectations. And especially watching Aaron Rodgers 4 plays into his season debut as a Jet, he gets hurt. And you see the same thing when they put Zach Wilson out there, and the same thing with Trevor Siemian and even Tim Boyle. The offensive line is not good. And again, it's easy to say, go out there and see what you can find in free agency. But I mean, they really you got to, especially you got to go all in and build around Aaron Rodgers. So for me, I also considered the young man out of Oregon State, Talise Foyuga. I was torn between the two of them. I either one, take your pick. I think they're personally in my top 10 offensive line. They're right there. It wouldn't faze me where he starts. He probably will start as a guard, but at some point he'll develop into a tackle. So I definitely see some flexibility there, but he's definitely big because he's been playing on the right side for Atlanta. He's been right tackle for Atlanta the last couple of years. So I'm curious to see where he'll be positioned. But I see him being drafted here in New York. 11, Michael Penix Jr. Minnesota, it's about time. And I think it's all a foregone conclusion. I also considered Bo Nix here. I'm curious to see, and within the top 12, that I think a quarterback would make more sense because especially if you've seen what Kevin O'Connell has done with these quarterbacks this year, like we had the Joshua Dobbs story there for a while, and then Nick Mullins and Jared Hall, they're not it, respectfully. And again, also to Kirk Cousins, I cannot see him coming back next year, especially coming off an injury like that. Especially again at this point, he's best moving on from him. And you can probably, I know he'll go somewhere else where he can play for a contender. But for me, I like Penix Jr. here. I think he has the IQ. I think he has the skill set. I think O'Connell will love him. Now, if Bo Nix is drafted here, for example, I think Bo would be my second pick here in terms of quarterback. I think he has the IQ and he has the dual threat ability as well. So I can see him, Penix Jr. or Bo Nix being drafted here. Number 12. This is where things get a little interesting. Before I get into this pick, I think the Denver Broncos are the most dysfunctional organization. I think they're going to have a hard time getting some guys to come play for them. The fact that Russell Wilson, first and foremost, you guys paid him. You paid him to be a star, but you also paid him to lead your team, to get your team to the playoffs. What I've seen around Russell Wilson the last couple since he's been there, it's disgusting. Cortland Sutton is a good wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy has not developed as a first-round wide receiver. Tim Patrick, for another year, he missed now 2 seasons in a row due to injury. Javonte Williams coming off injury. The offensive line is not the best. And their defense, and it's interesting that Russell Wilson, for the most part, has gotten, to an extent, flack the wrong way. And the way that they handled this in terms of threatening to he didn't want to restructure his contract, so they benched him because of that. I think that's classless. And personally, that just lets me know the coach that Sean Payton is. I would say this, I'll say this for the record. There are coaches I would play for, and there's coaches I wouldn't play for, and he's one of them. Essentially, this is not the quarterback. I feel bad for us because it's not him. That's not the quarterback for Sean Payton. Sean Payton wants someone that reminds me of Drew Brees. And for me, if they do take a quarterback, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Bo Nix. That's why I had Penix at 11 with Minnesota. But for me, let's just hypothetically look at it this way, right? Russell Wilson needs some playmakers. So I went with Troy Franklin. Because even though quarterback is their top need, it's really hard to make a case why you should not take a receiver. Again, Knicks, Penix Jr., Jalen Daniels, I think will be there for whoever they'll take at this with this pick. But I think Troy, coming out of Oregon, is a good receiver. Quickness off, especially off press coverage. I think he can stretch the field, and especially watching him on tape, he can make guys miss an open field. And if you draft, again, this is the question. If you draft Bo Nix, Jalen Daniels, even Penix Jr., because you're going to now have to after seeing that with Russ, you're going to really have a tough time persuading guys to come play for you. And you draft a guy, let's just say you really can't get anybody like that. Then what? Now they're stuck. And personally, I just think Denver has now put themselves in a very, very bad situation because it's clear that they have no identity, they have no direction, and more importantly, it looks like Russ will be gone, but I still think that they should consider drafting a wide receiver because they need others. They need some other stuff: defensive line, particularly defensive tackle, safety, edge, linebacker, corner. I mean, even running back. I like Javonte Williams, but coming off those injuries are not easy. The Las Vegas Raiders, the 13th pick, I say they should take Nate Wiggins. For me, their defense has not been the best, and they need to work. They need to definitely buff up the defense for sure. Jack Jones, for the most part, has been a decent corner. But I think Nate Wiggins coming out of Clemson, I think he has the flashes of being a number one corner. I get it with the history for Oakland drafting players out of Clemson, but I think he can show promise. Now, Las Vegas, they also need a lot. They need everything across the board. Defensive line, offensive line, corner, the corner, linebacker, quarterback, and even running back. Because I know Josh Jacobs will be a free agent it's coming on top of my mind, but it would not faze me if they went defense, because the last few years they've needed to invest in some defense because it's not been the best. And that's just me. Number 14, painfully, New Orleans Saints. I say they should take Jared Verse, defensive lineman. For me, he gives them. I think this is a good pick. Again, New Orleans, this is tough. They really can't really make a whole lot of moves because of the signing of Derek Carr. I do expect it to have some heavy turnover. I don't know what it's to be, but they need to definitely invest in a edge rusher. I mean, other than edge rusher, on my notes, edge rusher, offensive line, defensive tackle, safety, and I even consider Brock Bowers here as well. They definitely did a playmaking tight end. I like Chris Olave. I do expect them to move from Michael Thomas. Alvin Kamara might be moved on as well. But for me, why I picked Jared here, I think for me, he's a powerful player who wins with speed to power from the 3 and 2 point stances. Now, if you put him on the other side of Cam Jordan, like comparing him to Cam Jordan, he's not as big as Cam Jordan, but he definitely has a ceiling. And I wouldn't be surprised in that. And they should consider investing in defensive tackle. But I'm curious to see what the Saints will do in the offseason. 15, the Indianapolis football team. I'm not calling the Colts. This is going to be interesting. This will be another team, interesting offseason. I considered Cooper DeJean here. They need to also safety, wide receiver, defensive tackle, edge, and linebacker. This is going to be an interesting offseason. For me, I picked Cooper here coming out of Iowa because Cooper is very versatile in the secondary, and I mean, I don't see him as a return type of player like running punts, but I think you've got to infuse some talent around him as much as possible, especially with this roster. I don't know what this Colts roster is going to look like next year. I expect it to look different. And knowing Chris Ballard and knowing Mr. Irsay, I do expect them to be an interesting offseason. But I definitely think he has the size and production that will check off the Colts for sure. I considered here, again, this was interesting. I considered Kool-Aid. It's going to be what I get used to that. McKinstry out of Alabama. I even considered Nate Wiggins here. But I think Cooper would make the most sense. I didn't have Cooper go as low as 20. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Before we get into 16 through 32, let's get into the sponsor of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast, and that is Zagnif Apparel. Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to dress like you're already famous? You can and you will with Zagnif Apparel.
The following is a presentation of Zagnif Productions, LLC. Introducing Zagnif Apparel. Our comfortable line of leisure wear and athletic wear will have you comfortable and stylish at any occasion. Whether you're at the gym, out shopping, or just relaxing at home. Whether you're an athlete or just want to lay around the house, we've got the perfect outfit for you. Stop by our website today and pick up your favorite pieces. Zagnif Apparel. Dress like you're already famous.
You can and you will dress like you're already famous with a nice 15% off using my discount code BIGNATE off your final purchase. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Please, I encourage you to check out Zagnif Apparel. Great clothing line. Please check them out, and you will dress like you're already famous. We'll be back. We're back, and with the 16th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks, I said they should take Jerzon Newton. Again, Seattle's another team outside of offensive line, safety, linebacker, even edge. I like to see them buff up their defense a little bit more. Their defense is going to take a hit. They're going to lose a couple players. Leonard Williams, I think, will be a free agent. Frank Clark, Bobby Wagner, and there's somebody else on that. Jordan Brooks, I want to say it is. So their defense is definitely going to take a hit. in terms of defense. Now, last year, and they opted to draft Devin Witherspoon. Not mad at the pick. Just want to say Jalen Carter was there. So I think for me, he's arguably the best defensive lineman. I think he has great hands, great run defense, and he especially versatile in alignment on the defensive line. So it wouldn't phase me if they're taken here. So and then also too, why not connect with your former teammate out of Illinois? So I mean, just the motor about this kid. It's going to be something special to watch. 17, Jacksonville should take Keon Coleman. I personally believe that they need a wide receiver, and they're going to be rebuilding. I think with a little disappointing to watch Jacksonville this year. Like I said, they're a couple pieces away from being a good team. I just think Calvin Ridley did disappoint a little bit. Christian Kirk was out. Zay Jones probably will be gone. So why not rebuild that receiving core? Now, I also consider offensive line here because they definitely can use some especially on the inside, because they definitely need to buff up that offensive line. Some of those guys getting older, and also to some guys who can't stay healthy. So, but I expect them to draft a receiver, maybe an offensive line wouldn't hurt, defensive tackle, edge, safety corner. So be curious to see what they draft. 18, Amarius Mims. Again, I value offensive line, and this year this definitely looked a lot different for Joe Burrow. I feel bad for him. I don't think he really had a stable offensive line. Now, I considered J.C. Lentham. I even considered Troy Fontanu out of Washington, because for me, I really do think that you've got to invest in offensive line, especially around Joe Burrow. Now, the guys, Orlando Brown departed for free agency. I mean, they signed him, great signing, but the right side particularly could use some work because some guys just haven't exceeded expectations. Because Jonah Williams is scheduled to hit free agency, and his productivity did not warrant to say, yeah, we'll re-sign you. So, especially at right tackle, I think this is the kid that they should go look at. I mean, he's 6'7". Experience at the position is a little shaky, but the talent's there. For a guy his size, he moves very well. He had come out of Georgia. He was behind upperclassmen for the most part of 2022. This year, 2023, he missed 6 games. But looking at the tape, he definitely needs some. There's definitely some things he needs to work on. I think his hand placement needs to be a lot better. His footwork needs some work. But which, especially offensive linemen, that's football 101, because it will help you hold on to blocks and stay in front of pass rushers. Especially when you're going up against a Myles Garrett or an Aaron Donald. And again, I think with coaching and development, that'll get better. And he can play left tackle, but again, with brother Zeus Jr. over on the left, and he most likely be playing right tackle, and I don't have an issue with that. The Cheeseman, the Green Bay Packers, go Pack, go! Da-dun-dun, da-dun-dun. I said that all wrong. I'm sorry. Shout out to the Packers, man. Corner, I said they need to go after Teron Arnold. I also considered Cooper DeJean here. I also considered Denzel Burke. Their defense will need some work. I think he gives them some depth. And I'm kind of curious to see what this Packers team will look like next year. I expect it to be different, because especially with Rasul Douglas getting traded, and then with Jaheir Alexander, I don't know what they're going to do with that. They're going to be thin at corner. For me, Teron, I think he's a great athlete. He's got quickness. He's got the body control to, especially against matchups wide receivers, like example Justin Jefferson. He's definitely got the speed, but especially outside of Kool-Aid, even though he was a top star, Teron showed flashes to be a first round pick. So I'm curious to see what they'll do. For me, with this next pick, Tampa, for me, I think offensive line. I also said, okay, this is where things kind of get tricky. I said they should take Troy Fatuni out of Washington. This was also interesting. I had him going as low as maybe top 25. I felt as though he would be a good fit for Baltimore. I think he's a ready-made offensive lineman. I think he's a good prospect. I think he will right away. I think he'll thrive. I can't see him going no lower out the first round. I expect them to take an offensive lineman, but I also expect it's going to be interesting to see what they'll do. Linebacker, safety, court. They'll probably re-sign Baker Mayfield, knowing them. So I'm curious to see what they'll do. Mike Evans is also going to be a free agent. Devin White, Levante Davis, Antoine Winfield Jr. Will be a free agent. So I'm curious to see what Tampa will do next year. 21, I said that Arizona will take Kool-Aid McKinstry. Now, the reason why I said this is because Arizona needs a corner. And I think he would be a great fit. And especially they need a guy of his talent to take that defense to the next level. And they're very thin at corner, and it's not the best. And especially this team, for the most part, did okay. They did seek some expectations, so I'm not surprised. But I'd like to see them take a corner here. I also considered Cooper here. I considered Teron here. But I think Kool-Aid make the most sense. But take your pick. Either one will be drafted, in my opinion. 22, Kamari Lassiter will be drafted by the Los Angeles Rams. I could see that. Now, for me, they're also this another team that needs defense. Now, for the most part, the Rams did well. They're going to make the playoffs. I think they've done a good job in developing, identifying good talent to rebuild the defense. And I think that this young man will be the answer. I think he has the size. I think he has the speed. I think he will do well in a defense like that. I considered as well the corner out of Toledo, Carion Mitchell. Same thing. I mean, I think he's a little bit better in man coverage, and it wouldn't faze me if he's taken here. But I think Kamari will be a good pick for Los Angeles. 23, Pittsburgh selects Jordan Morgan. Pittsburgh needs they need a lot. Coming out of Arizona last 2 years, more than likely I could see him being a tackle or a guard. He's quick off his feet, but he does need to work on his strength a little bit. I think he is a great prospect. I think the talent's all there. Great hands and the hand fighting, especially countering pass rushers. I think Pittsburgh would love that because they definitely need some offensive line because some guys this year very extremely disappointed. I considered Talise Fangagla out of Oregon State. So you can put Broderick Jones on the other side. So why not take another offensive line and build that offensive line up for another few years? 24, I said that the Buffalo Bills take Chop Robinson. Now, I also considered wide receiver because outside of Stephon Diggs, guys have not exceeded. Gabe Davis, I thought, were taking that step forward this year, and he just wasn't consistent for me. I consider Brian Thomas here with this pick. And it wouldn't faze me if they would look to upgrade the number 2 wide receiver possession. But defensively, Buffalo's going to lose some players. I was also considered Adonai Mitchell as well, but they're going to lose some guys on that defensive side of the ball. Von Miller and, his off the field incident and painfully did not register a sack in 11 games. It's going to look a little different next year in Buffalo. So why not? I think Chop would be good. You're getting more. You're addressing a premium position that's getting more and more inexpensive to spend on because these guys are getting paid like there's no tomorrow. So I'm curious to see what they'll do with this pick. It wouldn't faze me if wide receivers taken here, but I said they should work on the defense. 25. Philadelphia should take Emeka Ibaka out of Ohio State. I also considered offensive line here. I considered the kid Kingsley Samatia. But I kind of can see Philadelphia. I think this might be a reach. Wide receiver, because only I think personally, outside of AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, I think Jalen Hurts could use another playmaker. I expect them to address tight end because corner, defensive tackle, and edge. Because DeAndre Swift will be a free agent. You can always, and I think they'll re-sign him. That in this Eagle team, I definitely think he needs another playmaker. Offensive line wouldn't hurt, and this could be a reach. We'll see, but I expect them to do one or two things. It wouldn't surprise me if they went in this route, defense. I could say Denzel Burke would be an interesting pick here for me. This is another guy I had on my list. Now, for me, if you know the history of the Eagles, especially to Harry Roseman, they've avoided drafting defensive backs early. I don't know what that is, but James Bradbury and Darius Slay, for some unknown reason, I don't know why they haven't exceeded expectations from where they were last year. And their defense, for the most part, has taken a step back this year. That's probably one of the glaring holes. So, I mean, at this point, this was kind of tough because as it progressed, it was hard for me to make a true choice in where Philadelphia should go. So it wouldn't faze me if they went defense with this pick. 26, Kansas City. I went with Xavier Worthy. Again, they need some offense. They need Patrick Mahomes needs some playmakers, and what he's had out there just has not exceeded expectations. However, I would like to remind everybody, when you win a championship, it's hard to, especially when your quarterback is paid, you can't really make moves like you used to. And your Sky Moore, Rashid Rice, I think are going to be good wide receivers, but they need time. But the other guys that they've brought in, like Kadarius Toney, we thought would have taken that step forward. Disappointed. And I'm. It would be interesting to see what they'll do, but they need a guy who can separate and keep the chains moving and make plays and actually catch the damn ball. And I think Xavier does that, in my opinion. I consider Keon Coleman here. I could also consider the kid out of Georgia, but I think he'll be a second-round pick, Lad McCarkey. Um, Even Adonai Mitchell, I even consider him as well. So I'm curious to see what Kansas City will do, but I like Xavier Hill here. 27. Houston takes Koyon Mitchell. Again, why not continue to buff up the defense, especially on the other side of Derek Stingley Jr. For me, he is especially played on special to He played off coverage, but he can play press coverage. He has the quickness, and I like that especially. I think no corner forced more incompletions within the 2 years, I think, than Mr. Mitchell at Toledo did. So that is something I think Houston would love. And also remember, Cleveland had this pick, but when they traded Deshaun Watson, gave this pick. So the Houston Texans definitely have a first-round pick. And it wouldn't faze me. Again, I also considered here defensive lineman, edge, linebacker, offensive line. I think you can find those in day 2, day 3, and even another wide receiver. I like Nico Collins, but John Michie III has promise. And again, this was his first year. This was his first season back, really. So I expect he has promise. I think he'll be good next year. I think he'll have a breakout season for sure. So I'm curious to see what they'll do for sure with him. Painfully, the Detroit Lions took the guy where I think he'll mostly go. Detroit takes Kingsley Sumatia. I think he would be a good fit here. It wouldn't hurt to buff up the offensive line because one or two things. Detroit has a few guys that are going on free agency, and I think they could definitely start buffing up that offensive line. Kingsley's played left and right tackle for BYU for the last couple of years. And I think he has the size. I think he has the tenacity. I think he has good hand movement, all those things. And then there's some things he can also work on as well. And again, like I said, Taylor Decker, a couple of, I forgot who else is going in free agency. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. So, be interesting to see. Miami, 29. They take Braylon Trice. For me, Miami needs to buff up their defense. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are coming off injuries, and I wish them both all get well soon, have a healthy recovery. Emmanuel Ogba's contract they'll move on from him. There's some guys that they're probably going to move on from. I think coming off a great performance against Texas, coming out with playing for Washington, I think he is somebody that gives them quality depth. Now, I think he's going to develop right away. He gives usually everything with power on every snap. He had 76 quarterback pressures this season. Can you imagine him on the other side when these guys get back healthy? And then I could see that for sure. He's got the size, 6'3", so I'm curious to see what they'll do with it. But I do expect them to have some defense. 30. The football team in Dallas selects Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. And unfortunately, I think, again, they could buff up the offensive line because Tyron Smith and Tyler Badez are going to be both free agents. And Tyron Smith, no disrespect, I just think it's time to move on from him. I also consider defense here. They definitely, but I think offensive line should be number one priority for sure. Running back as well, even defensive tackle. But I like him here only for a couple of things. I think my only issue is, again, give it time. I think he'd be a great offensive lineman. At his size, he's 6'7". Because he actually at one point was actually, I think when he he could kind of even be like if you're running a goal line play, for example, he could be like a tight end. But there's some areas he needs to work on. Looking at the tape, he's very inconsistent on his timing. He needs to be better on if you see delays, even pushing people, and then rather than locking them up and blocking them. I think Dallas can help him with that, knowing the offensive line they've had over the years, and I think coaching. But any NFL team can help a guy like this fix those problems. But he moves. You can't teach him how especially in pass protection or run blocking. So I'm curious to see how he'll develop. I expect him to be fine. I don't have really any other issues. I considered, again, Kingsley here. I even went with these next two picks, which I will announce when we come back. And we're back. And with the 31st overall pick, I said San Francisco should take Patrick Paul. For me, I wrote that is an error on my end. I think they're going to take the kid out of Oregon State, Talise Fungoa, because their experiment they have a right tackle just hasn't panned out. And I think he's the best run blocker. I apologize for not having that up on the right screen. I think he'll be good for them. I think he'd fit right in his zone-heavy offense, in my personal opinion, for Kyle Shanahan. So I expect the kid Talise Fungoa will be drafted by San Fran. And then 32nd overall would be Patrick Paul out of Houston. For me, offensive line has been key. And at some point, we probably will need to move on from Ronnie Stanley because, again, even though he's had good games coming back from injury, and I can't really see him being here much longer. And at some point, getting involved with the offensive line. Now, I also considered here Troy. I also considered the kid Kingsley. I even considered Tyler Gotton here. But I'm curious to see what they'll do with their offensive line. But it's going to be an interesting offseason. I also consider defense because I know Jadeveon Clowney, in the year he's had, I expect him to have a big payday. Justin Madubuike, somebody's going to pay him. Patrick Queen will be gone. Michael Pierce, I know recently is in the process. It just got a 2-year extension. And also to Kevin Zeitler too. We'll probably move on from him. Don't know what we're going to do about Morgan Moses. So that's our really biggest areas: offensive line, defensive line, running back, and edge. Because Owe, I thought we'd have taken that stuff forward this year. I'm still holding out hope for him. But Patrick Paul, I apologize for the San Francisco. That was a typo on my end. So let's get into one final thought of the podcast.
Thoughts are running through my mind. Someone took some time to find a minute or two to organize.
The one final thought is, look, this is the first 1.0 mock draft. Things can change. But I'm not going to be so trigger happy to say quarterback. I think it's easy to say that, and looking at some of the situations that these guys are going into, I think it's going to be really, really tough. For me, I expect, within the first 12 picks, I expect 4 quarterbacks to be drafted. But it's also going to be interesting to see what they're going to do once they get the guy that they want. Example: if a quarterback's taking if Washington takes a quarterback, I'm curious to see what you're going to do, how you're going to build around them. Offensive line, receivers. I just don't want to draft a guy and you don't have the right pieces around him to succeed. And again, I'll use probably Bryce Young, clear example. So again, stay tuned for 2.0. We'll probably do that one once the playoffs are at an end. So thank you for tuning into my 1.0 mock draft. Again, I apologize on the San Francisco pick. I don't know why I wrote that twice, but that was an error. So Patrick Paul has twins. They're twins. But no, the kid from Oregon State, I think San Francisco should take him. I think he'll be good. I think he'll fit well in their system, especially when they like to run the ball with Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. And again, also too, same thing, the offensive line, Trent Williams is getting a little older, and I think why not? But I think on the right side, a little bit, the experiment's kind of not succeeded. So offensive line is the best way to go. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude this episode of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Please like, comment, and subscribe for all future content. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great week. Stay safe and stay warm. Had a little bit of a first taste of winter as of yesterday. So again, make sure you stay safe. Make sure you have all the things you need. And I'm out. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.
I'm elevated, oh yeah. We was waiting, oh yeah. To make a statement, it's clear. The way them boys persevere. Yo, we taking the stairs. Don't let them get in our ear. They go watch, I'ma stare. Tell them pull up a chair. God gon' answer our prayers. Living now. They told me dreams come true once you live it out. I picked the pieces from my childhood in a broken house. And heal my soul from the trauma we've been giving out. I hear the whispers in the wind under smoky clouds. And tell myself once again, I'ma work it out. So much shit can happen, yo, it got me tripping now. Yeah, it's feeling different now.
I wonder if it's worth living now. They told me working 9 to 5 just to make it out. And now the dark nights got me needing mouth to mouth. Resuscitate my dreams, tell me what it's all about. I wonder if it's worth living now. They told me show a little skin just to make it out. They told me grind until I doubt, till I reach the clouds. Excuse me a little moment while I break out. Never let them take me out.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the next big thing, the next up-and-coming sports journalist, Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
I want to thank you, yeah. I want to thank you. Ooh. For all the times you put up with me. Thank you. And you helped me retain my sanity. Thank you. I want to thank you. And I want to thank you. All I want to do is say thank you for everything